Good evening, everybody, and hello from Shelter in Place Day 1 here in Massachusetts. Thanks for tuning in this evening, um, and hope everybody across Massachusetts and around the country who has been under one of these orders doing everything they can to stay healthy, to stay safe, to stay sane during it too. As you guys all know, two little ones, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, that shelter in place order can be rather challenging at times. But look, critically important here that we all do our part. I've been on the phone constantly over the course of the past couple of days with healthcare professionals and great concern that these diagnoses are going to continue to surge. They've been surging about 30 or so percent per day here in Massachusetts, in part because we are testing more people, but in part also because that virus continues to spread. So we're just at the beginning of this shelter in place recommendation. Need everybody to do all that they can in order to abide by it. You can obviously still go out if you need to, pick up your prescriptions, go to the grocery store. But please remember, if you do, particularly if you go to the grocery store, maintain that social distancing. A lot of the stuff that you touch in there is going to be touched by other folks. So grab it, put it in your bag, come home, before you get in your car, wash your hands, use some hand sanitizer. After you're done unpacking those groceries, do the same thing and wash them up really well. Make sure that, and wipe them down if you can. Make sure that we don't bring those germs from outside inside your house. Going to be a challenging time for an awful lot of folks, and we will get through this, but we do need every single one of us to do our part. It's been a bit of a wild circumstance for our family as well. I'm sure like so many other families out there. My wife runs a nonprofit, and this is a particularly challenging time for them. She's been working essentially around the clock, and she and I now are splitting the day in half. I was working in the mornings, and then with the kids in the afternoon. She was with the kids this morning, and then working all afternoon. And so, like so many families out there, our routine is right out the window, and we will try to make sense of this new normal as best we can and provide a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old some outlet for that energy and that curiosity. So if you guys got any suggestions, please write them below, send them all in. We'll take all the help we can get. Thrilled tonight to be joined by a friend for our town hall, and somebody who I admire greatly, somebody who has shown extraordinary courage in a professional career and personal life, to shed some insights about what this time of social distancing and coronavirus can mean for about 20% of our population that struggles with some mental behavioral diagnosis. So Trenni Kucinich is a sports reporter for NBC 10 here in Boston. And about probably 2 or 3 years ago, went public with her own diagnoses of anxiety and depression. I actually reached out to her after there was this great story about her in the Boston Globe. And we've done a number of events together trying to highlight the fact that mental behavioral diagnoses affect about 20% of the population. And that one of the biggest challenges we confront is that people don't talk about it. We are still struggling with the stigma here, and it's folks like Trenni that, through raising her voice and saying, hey, this is far more common than people think. You can get through this. We will get through this, and there's a way to manage it that means that we manage almost any other chronic condition. And she's been able to excel at her career as a reporter and broadcaster, and is doing tremendous things here and around Boston. So thrilled to have her tonight. And Trenni, take it away.
So tell us a little bit about how you're approaching this shelter in place period, and kind of as you're going about it, what it means for you and what it means for folks out there that we need to keep into account and take into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is a really uncertain and unsettling time for a lot of people, but in particular, anyone who has had issues with anxiety, depression, any sort of mental health issue in the past. Because one, I think everyone's just a little triggered. Whether it's the thought of, for me, being alone in an apartment by myself for days on end and not knowing when that's going to end. For other people who maybe have regular appointments with their therapist, or are used to going to an office, or are used to a schedule, and all of that's thrown into the state of influx. And that can be really scary and overwhelming. I mean, I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, I feel fine during the day, and then I lay in bed at night, and all of a sudden I have a panic attack, because no one knows if they're going to get sick. They don't know if their job is going to be affected. There's economic uncertainty. Sometimes there's relational uncertainty. If you're living in a home with another person, and maybe that relationship isn't everything that you want it to be. So I think that's the worst part about all of this, Joe, is that it's just, no one knows. No one knows what the end date is going to be. No one knows what it's going to bring. No one knows, is this going to resurface again come the fall? And I think all of that triggers so much of what a lot of us already deal with.
So how, given those challenges, and I think it's so great of you to recognize it and to share it with everybody, but given those challenges, what advice, one, would you just have for a common citizen, right, about ways we can try to help folks that are going to be battling some additional struggles here, and what advice would you give? And then from a policy side of things, what do you think, if you have any suggestions there about what we need to make sure is accounted for out of the response from Washington?
I guess I can work backwards from a policy standpoint. I think it's so important that telehealth is also included in mental health. And I know, Massachusetts state government just passed a great ABC law that, addressed this specifically, that telehealth is a part of a larger behavioral and physical health group, but again, the idea of, okay, I have this standing weekly appointment or bi-weekly appointment with my therapist, and now I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. And if I do have that appointment, is it going to be covered by my insurance, or am I going to get all the blowback and pushback? I mean, making sure that however we have to adjust our lives in order to keep it as normal as possible, I would say that should be front of mind and front and center when we're talking about any sort of legislation that is going to be helpful for people dealing with mental health issues. On the other side of, like, how am I dealing with it and other people, and what just the general community can do, I think I keep telling people this, that community is so important, that we are literally in this together, even though we're all separate. A lot of times I think when people deal with mental health issues, that in and of itself can feel really isolating, because you feel like no one really understands what's going on in your brain. They don't understand how you might react in a social situation or a pressure situation, and it's hard to articulate. But this is different. I mean, everybody has, at least, maybe not the exact same anxieties, but everyone's sort of feeling the same discomfort around the situation and the same uncertainty. And so I think that in a weird way, and I said this to someone yesterday who reached out to me on Instagram about, what they're going through and how they're trying to cope and deal with everything. I said, maybe on the other side of this, the positive that comes out of this is that we've all learned to explain and articulate what we're going through, and be more open to being more candid about talking about, like, really what we're feeling in a really difficult time. So that to me is really important. Reach out to your friends and family, whether they have known mental health issues or not, because as I was talking with a friend of mine who is a psychologist last night, she said situations like this can trigger relapses. It can trigger something that was never there. And all of a sudden you have a mental health issue that was undiagnosed or undealt with before. And that's not to scare anyone from it. That's just to remind, I think, everyone that it's really important in this time that we really take care of each other.
And so, one, I think extremely important advice there, right? Recognizing that this is going to be so disruptive this period of time. One, a bit indefinite duration. We have the shelter-in-place order recommendation here in Massachusetts that goes from today at noon till April 7th, and is then up for reevaluation, right? And obviously can be modified between now and then, perhaps more stringent depending on what you hear from our public health and healthcare professionals, and a lot of concern that Massachusetts, it's going to get worse before it's going to get better. And we're seeing obviously headlines coming out of New York and Louisiana of systems that are on the verge of potentially being overrun, right? So this extremely scary and uncertain time for everybody, to say nothing of the economic impact and the job losses you said. So I think a lot of people nervous, on edge, now going to be in confined space, harder to get that social interaction. If you have other ways of trying to alleviate that stress, whether that's being with friends or exercise, or whatever else, a lot of those avenues are shut down. So navigating through that. I'd be curious if also, just to the extent that you're comfortable, sharing a bit of your own story here and how you're dealing with some of this as well.
Yeah, so I have been really like leaning on, unfortunately, I have a friend, poor thing, who's a psychologist. So I'm always like, her name's Shameen, and I'm texting her like, Shameen, is this a good thing to do? And what should we be telling people? And how should we be handling this? And by an extension, I also have a friend whose wife is an infectious disease doctor.
Oh my
And
God.
so I keep asking, is this okay? Is that okay? But being able to then share that, I think, is helpful. But for me, I don't know about anyone else, but I'm a schedule person. So when I'm working and I have an office to go to, I know that I have to get up by 7 in the morning, be out on my run by 8 o'clock, eat breakfast around 9, do my daily email at 10 o'clock, and then leave for the office by, 11:30 or 12. So I'm there to do my updates. Well, now only 2 days a week do I have, at least right now. We're going to be having hopefully live shows next week again. But even then, it's going to be a different, it's a whole different schedule when you're doing it from your couch at home. And I jokingly said yesterday, on Twitter, I said, how exactly the people who work at home all the time, how do you keep yourself from cracking open a bottle of wine at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and just Netflix and chilling? Because it's really easy to, not to be like, oh, I'm home and there's not really any work to do. So I'll do that run tomorrow. I'll work out tomorrow. And I should have grabbed it. I would show everyone. If you saw my planner, I still keep like an old school planner on my counter. I have written by the hour, and maybe I don't completely stick to it, but for the most part, I've tried to, 6:30 a.m. this morning, it was 6:30 a.m. workout, 8:45 a.m. call with Joe, 11:30 a.m. WGBH, which has been, by the way, has been pushed back because of, the governor speaking. 12:30 updates with work, 1 o'clock write a column for the website, 2 o'clock do laundry. I mean, like the littlest, tiniest things that I would never write down, because for me, that creates some sense of a day and some sense of normalcy. And I'm also really trying to get outside at least once a day. And I think I have that on my schedule, like 1:30 after I tape my updates for NBC Sports Boston that'll run during Felger and Maz. I'm going to make myself a cup of coffee and I'm going to go for a walk outside, and not with anyone else, and keeping, social distance, which obviously is something we all have to keep in mind. Don't be going for a walk with 6 other people. But just to get that fresh air, to get out of your house, to move. But I think keeping that schedule is really important. And so many places have made it easy to work out in your home. I think exercise, I'm a big proponent of exercise. I'm just the natural endorphins and it just getting you going and just helping you let out all that stress somewhere that's a little bit more healthy than maybe in other ways. And so many of the big fitness companies and even the small ones have daily workouts that you can stream online. Some are charging, some aren't. And whatever you can do and whatever you can afford, if you can afford to pay, say, $20 or $30 a week to do online with a small boutique fitness center in your area, do that, because then you're helping a small business stay alive. If you can't do that, something like, I know we all made fun of Peloton during the holidays with that terrible commercial, but Peloton is doing a free 90-day trial that you can stream, and they're not just bike workouts. They're all these different types of workouts. You can even just go on YouTube on your television and do, a yoga class. Anything like that, I think, is just helpful to giving you something to do. And one other thing, I know that there's a lot of people, Joe, working at home that are not working. And I was surprised to not find a lot of resources about that, to not find out, like for me, who still is working, at least there's something every day I get up and I have to reply to our work email. I have to tape updates. Next week, I'll have to do our shows. But if someone lost their job, I think that can be really overwhelming in and of itself, because there's not a goal to get through every day. So if that's the situation, I think it's great to try and help other people. Find out if an elderly neighbor needs you to go make a grocery run for them, or maybe you're really passionate, you've worked in hospitality or catering or something for a long time, and that industry, that restaurant and bar industry, is getting absolutely hammered during this. I hate to do this because I know you're a congressman. Call your congressman, call your senators, write letters to them to make sure that they know how important it is. And it just gives you, I think, a sense of purpose greater than yourself.
All of that is great. And I will say,
and thank you for ruining my day, because now I'm going to have an inbox flooded with people.
One, that's the job, right? And as you can imagine, literally every time I'm out in public, if you're doing the grocery run or whatever else these days, you don't get very far before somebody stops you. And it's my restaurant, my son's restaurant, my neighbor's restaurant, small business, a lot of independent businesses, so landscapers, um, massage therapists. Interesting enough, we've got a lot of folks that have called in and some folks that have emailed and approached me on the street. Obviously, the restaurant industry as well. The favorite coffee shop my wife and I love to go to at the moment is closed indefinitely down the street here in Newton. So people are being devastated by it. And look, I'll tell you, even from my perspective, the way that you get through a job like this that can be particularly demanding is, one, you have a great team around you, and you have these structures in place so that you can, their schedules are very full, but we can coordinate, and you get through the day with all the incoming. Having everybody work from home without kind of that centralized space makes that infinitely more challenging. You try to get people on the same page, infinitely more challenging. Details evolving as quickly as they are out of Washington and here in Massachusetts as the virus spreads, and what that means and how we need to respond to it, and the needs of our constituents around the state, around my district, as those evolve so rapidly. The amount of incoming, as hard as we are trying to keep some semblance of a routine, it base and structure it so that you can navigate through it, it essentially goes out the window. And now, obviously, having this shelter-in-place order, you might have heard the screams coming through the door.
I haven't heard the kids yet. It's
good. They have
good
been
installation in the Kennedy household.
Apparently, because I thought you would have heard them because they were screaming rather loud. So trying to navigate all of that. And my wife and I, and she runs a nonprofit. She's got they're overburdened at the moment too. So the two of us trying to manage both of these things is particularly challenging. And that routine that basically gives you some structure and order is gone. And so trying to recreate some semblance of normalcy there. But bringing this back to where we started, for those that are suffering and struggling with some aspect of mental behavioral differences, how we as a community can then make sure that they get aspects to the support that they need. Some folks have been open about it, which is extremely courageous and enables us to help. But for a lot of others, whether they haven't been able to or willing to come forward yet, or as you also said, for those that are in difficult relationships or difficult times that are largely keeping those behind closed doors, well, at the moment, that adds another whole level of challenge and severity to this that I think not many people have given a whole lot of thought to.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, having never been in that situation as a child or as an adult in a relationship, until talking to a couple different friends over the last few days, embarrassingly, I'd never even thought about how this can really affect people who are in abusive relationships. You know, a friend of mine was saying that she knows a teacher in a school district who said this scares her because for kids she knows who are living in homes where they may be physically or emotionally abused, sexually abused, there are telltale signs when the kids come to school. You look for kids who are withdrawn, who are isolating, whose behavior all of a sudden changes. There may be actual physical signs, you know, bruises, marks on their body. A teacher can see that, a teacher can intervene, and they can help that child. But now that those kids aren't in school, that's not happening. And same, you know, for adult relationships. You know, a lot of times we talk all the time, people say, well, why would you stay in a relationship that was abusive or someone was, you know, physically or emotionally harming you? But it's a situation of control and also a situation of feeling helpless. And if you felt helpless before that you couldn't leave, I can't imagine what it must feel like now to literally be trapped inside and in a volatile situation where everybody's on edge. I know there are resources out there. Hopefully we can get those to people, that there are still people doing great work. And I think the state of Massachusetts has done a really good job of keeping those centers open and doing what they can to keep the people who need to use those facilities safe. But I think that's a group of people that that you need to think about in this time. And also, if you're financially able, and you are still working and you are still getting a paycheck, to give to those people. And to kind of circle back, you know, you were talking about the the restaurants and bars and massage therapists and salon people, you know, the people, I mean, I don't know what my hair is going to look like at the end of all of it. Spoiler alert, I'm a true blonde, but it's a little dirty. But what I've been trying to do, I even have, you know, I'm also super lazy. I have a cleaning person. I'm trying to pay those people as if I was still seeing them.
Right.
Because that's money that they count on, and it's money, frankly, that I have budgeted in.
Mhm.
And if you can do that, I think all those little things you think, oh, what would a $20 donation to a restaurant fund mean? Well, if it's your favorite restaurant group and everybody donates $20, that $20 very quickly turns into a couple $1,000s that they can then give back to those workers who aren't working at all. And I just think that you have to find a scale of what you can do in this time to sort of help make the situation as best as it can possibly be. And I really think that when you're doing something for other people, it makes your own personal situation feel more bearable. At least it has for me. And being able to help friends with small businesses and restaurants sort of do that, writing letters and using social media to reach people. And also what we're doing right here, I think is really great. If you have, I mean, regardless of what their situation is, get a Zoom account. Or if you have an iPhone, use FaceTime. We FaceTime with 4 of my girlfriends from home. I'm from Wisconsin originally the other night. And I hadn't laughed that hard in I don't know how long. And that, you know, again, is it the same as sitting over dinner and literally breaking bread? No, but it does make you feel more like I'm not just alone on my couch.
Absolutely. We've done that with family a bit over the course of the past couple of days too. And it's not the same, but it is, it's actually not bad, right?
Yeah,
And you at least get to see everybody and you get to have that conversation, which I think it can be extremely helpful. And just maintaining some sort of social contact and social bond, critically important to, for those folks watching out there that might have concerns about a friend or a neighbor. Obviously, one, excuse me, even in these challenging times, remember, our local law enforcement is still responding. And so if you sense any danger or you think somebody might be, call local law enforcement. There's local shelters all across the state, all around the country. If you do a quick Google search with your zip code, you should be able to, a couple of them should come up. You can call those emergency lines there. You can get access to resources and advice and what to do. And we just ask that, obviously, given these challenging times, you keep an eye out and try to make sure that people are getting the help that they need. And it was certainly worth checking in on folks if you can, right? Trenni, I am really grateful for your time and also for your courage and your willingness to come on and talk this morning, and for all that you've done across Massachusetts and around the country to make sure that we are centering people that need access to care and resources that might otherwise fall through the cracks here. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks for having me. One other quick note that I want to get in. My friend who I've been bugging the psychologist friend. If you are someone who takes medication for any behavioral health issue, keep taking it. Don't all of a sudden decide this is a good time to try to go off of that medication, change anything. Whatever you're doing, use the resources that you've learned in your therapy and the work that you've been doing, and keep doing it. And on a positive note, she did say this can be a great time for personal growth if you're trying to find a silver lining. That, this is obviously an awful, uncertain time, but there are things that we can do to come out better on the other side of it.
You got it. Trenni, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks so much for joining tonight, everybody. Thrilled to have you here. And Trenni, thank you again for joining the conversation. You want more information about what's going on and the latest with COVID response and the latest information, you can always go to our website, kennedy4ma.com/COVID-19. And please share this video so that you can get these conversations out and sharing important resources and conversation that Trenni just shared with us. Thanks so much, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy.